Hello everyone, welcome to today's Tech Talk, and today we've got a very special guest, and it's Megan Jones from Leeds Museums. Remember that you can find out everything that's going on in libraries at the moment by going to leeds.gov.uk/libraries, and also please follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Leeds Libraries. So I'm going to introduce you again to Megan, and she's going to take it away.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you for having me, firstly. Let me just share my screen. Hang on. There we go. Ooh. Is that working for you? Great. Cool. Hello, everyone. Firstly, thank you so much for coming. I'm Megan Jones. I'm the Digital Engagement Officer for Leeds Museums and Galleries. And today I'm going to talk to you about social media, what we do on our social media accounts, and mainly Twitter of all of them. And I'm not really going to talk about the pandemic, which is going to be lovely for everyone, hopefully. So I feel like we all need a bit of that, don't we? So what I'm going to talk about today is I'll give you a little bit of a background as to who we are. So spoiler alert, we are 9 museums and galleries in Leeds. Why social media is important, which is groundbreaking, and how we use our channels and why we spend so much more time on Twitter than any of the other ones. And also the kind of digital audiences that we talk to on there and how they differ between each channel. I'll talk through some case studies of some of the most successful content that we've posted and why it's been so successful. But also, really importantly, I'm going to talk about the challenges too, because I feel like too often people talk about successes with things, and there have been lots of challenges and there are still lots of challenges, and it's really important to kind of share those and explain how we've learned from them and how it's kind of shaped our strategy. So, who even are we? We are 9 museums and galleries in the greatest city in the world, Leeds. And we're the largest local authority run museum service in the country. We're funded by Leeds City Council and Arts Council England to do lots of lovely museum things. So each of our sites are very different, and I work across all of these in the audience development team. So there are 5 of us, but only 1 digital engagement officer, which, spoiler alert, is going to be a challenge that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on. So what do I do? In a nutshell, a huge part of my job is social media, as you probably guessed. So I am the voice behind the Leeds Museum's branded social media accounts. So we have Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and YouTube. So I run those. We have 21 accounts though overall across the whole of the service, which I don't manage myself, but I give support to the sites in helping them to kind of manage those and talking about best practice. I give training, and then I kind of look at analytics, and reporting is a big part of my role too. I write our policy, our guidelines, our strategy, everything strategic. And I also manage our email marketing. I manage the blog on our new website, which we redeveloped last year. So we kind of went external for that last year, and that's something that I worked really hard on with our team. So it is very lovely. If you have a little look at that, that would be great. And I do pay advertising, so we do ads. I do recently I have a development team with me of our new podcast, which it's sort of just finished our 2nd series. But if you aren't sick of my voice after this, then check it out, because we've worked really hard on it. Cool. So social media is important, huge information. So it seems like a really obvious thing to say, but there's still this feeling, I think, potentially like in museums and galleries and heritage sites especially, that digital is somehow less authentic than the physical. And if you think about in popular culture, there's this trope all too often that, you know, you've got like a teenager who is listening to his phone, or he's like, you know, playing on a Game Boy, and like the personality trait that goes along with that is being unsociable. And there's this idea that that if you're immersed in something digital, it's unsociable because you're not in the physical, if that makes sense. And actually now, especially now, I said I wasn't going to mention it, but it's a pandemic. Especially now, that's what society is. That's how people communicate. Social media is now the way that most people talk to their friends, their family. This morning I was literally talking to my nana on Instagram. Shout out to my nana for knowing how Instagram works, by the way. But like, platforms now have built-in direct messaging, so that now you don't even have to leave the platform to be able to have the kind of private one-on-one conversation that you want to have with someone. So a big part of this, something that I argue all the time, is that digital is as authentic as physical now, and that's just the way that the 21st century is. Social media is a source of news for many people, me included. For sure, you have to take the news that you receive on social media with a pinch of salt, Trump. But if you think about just a few weeks ago, when local lockdowns were starting to be announced, the lockdowns in Greater Manchester and around that area were announced at 9:45 p.m. on Twitter by a government official. So it's kind of where people get their news from now, and it's become a source of news for most people. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a good thing, but it is a fact. And if you think about when there's a natural, like a disaster, say, or like I'm thinking about the Manchester terror attacks here a few years ago, just an awful, terrible thing. But a way that people made their family and friends know that they were safe was by literally checking in on Facebook. And it's incredible, but horrendous thing that social media platforms have had to develop that feature. But it's really helpful, and it's a way of informing people. So they're key in terms of communicating and how society communicates now. Museums are so well placed for social media, because generally, with a few exceptions, they're a lovely antidote to the negative sides of social media that you see all too often. And museums were built for content, essentially. So I literally have like 5,000 pictures on my camera roll of my days at work, which I used to work at a law firm. Like, I have no images of that time, but I do have, like, most of my camera roll is from work. And that's a really lucky thing, I know. So also, the reach that we can get from social media is so much bigger than the reach that we can get physically. So thinking about the most popular content that we've posted this year, the most popular post was, I think it had a reach of around 1.7 million, and that was in around a week. And that's never ever going to be, it's not something we've replicated since, to be honest, but it's never ever going to be something that we can replicate physically in a museum. Like, we're never going to get that amount of people visiting our museum in a week to see an exhibition, unless at the minute we have one on, like, Leeds United or like Bielsa or something, because I'm sure 1.7 million people will probably come to that. But it's in these online spaces where we can refine our voice to be what we want it to be, and that is a voice that is welcoming, unintimidating, and approachable, and where we can build relationships with our followers, and other museums and funding bodies too. And also Bill Bailey, who drew us a picture of a moth once, which was really nice. So how we use our channels. At the moment, I'm kind of waiting for Facebook to die a little bit of a death, because I don't really personally like it, but as soon as, because our audiences are there, that we also have to be there. Like, as long as they're there asking us questions, we have to be there answering them. But I think Facebook, of all of the platforms, is the one that has changed the most in its existence. And now I think less people use it for what it was originally intended to be. Our main reason for using it now, though, is for advertising, and it has really good insights, really good kind of analytic section, and we use it to push events. So our main audience there is women between the ages of 35 and 44. So we can probably safely assume that it's mums looking for kind of family events for their children. And we get spikes in interest around half terms and school holidays and stuff as well. So that kind of confirms that. Instagram is also great, but we have, I guess it's a time and resource issue to do it really well, to be totally honest. there'll be more on that when it comes to challenges, but it's quite hard to be prolific on Instagram when you're not on site at the minute, not on site at museums, at the galleries. Our office isn't always that Instagrammable, and it's quite hard to be prolific on Instagram, I think, unless you're like a kind of an influencer who poses like every 5 minutes outside like a wall or something, like looking really cool. So Twitter is our jam for many reasons, but also the way that audiences are using all these channels is changing, so we have to change with them and constantly assess where and how they're spending their time. So, you know, considering things like TikTok, considering things like Snapchat, and if it's worth our time to be in those spaces, and how we can possibly do that with the resources that we have, which again we'll talk about in challenges. So why Twitter? So Twitter is where we can develop our tone of voice the most, and where we can have conversations with other institutions, and where we can play around with format and be lighthearted and use memes and GIFs, and kind of like design elements, and kind of use those things to build stories. So Twitter is really built for storytelling, and that's the key overarching strategy for us in these kind of digital spaces, is telling stories and engaging people through storytelling. So I've said before with a few of my colleagues and other services, and some of my peers, like, social media is a creative writing job, and it's a skilled job, and it's incredibly hard to kind of get that right, and it's something that takes a long time. It takes a lot of time to kind of build the relationships and build the tone, but once you get there, it's just a really engaging place to be. So a big part of our tone of voice there and informality is the personality that I've developed, or we've developed, our team's developed. It's kind of, I hope it is honest, and for genuinely like 3 years I've been trying to drip feed in that authenticity of there being a person behind the account. I never use the first person ever, it's always we, and I think that kind of creates a little bit of humor around that, like we as 9 museums and galleries are tweeting Harry Styles rather than like me, one person, because we do tweet Harry Styles a lot, and I will literally talk about that later. But for example, I got some posts delivered a few weeks ago that had nothing to do really with museums, but it was quite a slow day, and I just sort of tweeted saying, hey guys, this digital engagement officer has just got some post, or we've just got some posts. Do you want to see what's in it? And people were like, yeah, definitely. And like it really created like this engaging thing where people were like anticipating what it might be. And we did in the end turn that into like something related to the museums, because it was like my friend Erin, our archivist, had sent me a banknote of Bruce Springsteen, and that relates to a podcast that I recorded with her where she talked about Bruce Springsteen, and we've got a money exhibition coming in February, so it kind of tied in really well. But at the beginning I hadn't even really thought about how it would tie in. I just was like, this is a really fun thing that I'm really excited about, and other people might be excited about it too. So it was just a really nice thing. So in Bruce Springsteen, in Bruce we trust, yes. So I shared that on Twitter and people really liked it. Also my chair, which gave a shout out to the other day, is amazing, got delivered, and that's something that I share with people, and it's like it's a person behind the account. So basically just whenever I get anything delivered, I guess I just share it with people, but it just helps the followers to feel like there's someone there listening to them. The main reason, or validation rather, for cultivating this account is what museum Twitter has gone through in the last couple of years. So this tweet, I'm sure lots of us are aware of it, is from the Museum of English Rural Life. So absolute kudos and like thanks to them for this, because this point a couple of years ago now was when people started to notice that museums could be cool and could know the internet and like know how it worked, and that they weren't always as stuffy as they seemed. Okay, so I've been in my position for I think 3.5 years now, and when I first started we used to post very differently. So that was before the Museum of English Rural Life posted it, and you can really see a difference. So this is an example of something that we would post. We used to be really rigid in the way that we structured tweets. We'd cash in on hashtags like Women Wednesday, when now we don't really do that. And it's not I know some museums, some libraries do this really well, but for us, I never managed to find out a way. I always felt like it was us shoehorning content in to fit with a hashtag, and then the hashtag was like ruling our social media plan rather than the content leading the way. And it's just never something I'd really worked out how to manage with our tone of voice. So there's also, when I first started this, and to this day, there's the very real struggle. I'm sure if anyone's a social media manager here, it's like a thing where maybe if an event hasn't sold many tickets, one of your colleagues would be like, hey, and there's an event in 2 days, like, would you be able to just tweet about it and like get me loads of tickets, or can you just make this go viral? It's like, it literally doesn't work like that. And back in the day, I would probably be too scared to say no, and I'd be like, yeah, sure, I want to be as helpful as possible, but now I have the confidence in my role to say no, like, let's try something else, or that's probably not the best way, let's look at what else we can do instead. So this tweet I picked, it's not that bad, like it's fine, but it's probably not going to make your thumb stop scrolling down your feed. And also the thing about it is that storytelling is so important, and we've literally said that there's a story behind this, but we're not going to tell you it. Like, it's like that thing where social media is a means to get people somewhere else. Like, maybe we wanted more blog traffic that day, but it's basically saying that the Twitter audience aren't as important enough, you know? So there was a turning point, and it was poo related. So this is the tweet that kind of changed our strategy, basically. Also, behind the scenes, we did this when my manager was out. God bless Lizzie, who is an angel. She's on maternity leave at the minute, but she went out for like a meeting, and then we just came up with this, did it, and she came back and we were like, basically we tweeted about poo, and she was like, her face just dropped, but it worked out okay. So it's playful, it's got a visual element to it, and it plays on a Twitter trope. Like, we didn't make this up, I didn't design this, I copied and pasted it from someone else and then made it fit what we were doing. But it's also tongue-in-cheek and also informative and like honest, and it's not stuffy. Like, we know that not everyone's interested in art. People come into the art gallery sometimes to go to the toilet and just leave. Like, that's kind of fine, that's a resource we have, and that's okay. But this is an example of me scrolling through my feed, finding something funny, and then using it to fit what we do, basically. We received an overwhelmingly positive response to it, thank God. Less so from my colleagues, which I will talk about later in challenges. But I also had like a Skype message. So we use Skype for instant messaging in the council. And I had a Skype message from a chief officer saying, hello Megan, is everything okay? Just seen a tweet about poo, what's going on? And I panicked, and I had to write like a big thing, like, yeah, don't worry, it's strategic, it's all strategic, don't worry. And then it paid off, which is really good. But it caused like people were like, what's going on, we don't understand. But since then, the success that we had with that then informed our strategy, and is why our tone of voice was able to change. So I've picked out a few of my favourite kind of examples of how well this has gone for us. Alex Needham is a cultural editor for The Guardian, and he tweeted this, and it really rocked the museum world. Like, lots of people had lots to say about it, and it was about basically who should get credit for an exhibition. And on Museum Meme Day, which, side note, wasn't actually Museum Meme Day because I got my dates wrong and posted a museum meme. I was like, oh my God, hashtag Museum Meme Day. And the poor woman who runs Museum Meme Day was like, guys, stop tweeting Museum Meme Day, I haven't organised it yet, and we got it wrong. But basically we replied, we were like, what's happening, what are people talking about, how can we make this fit and tap into the conversation? So we posted this, and then he replied with this, which is kind of weird because we were kind of agreeing with what he said, just with a different angle. Hopefully you can all read that, by the way. So it was a bit weird, and it was also a bit savage, and also like, you don't really get it, and also like, do museums have to be sensible? Like, God, no. Like, if there's one thing I believe in, no, like, that's not a thing. And we wrote loads of responses to this. Me and Sarah and my team wrote loads of responses to this, and this is an example of don't ever reply in the heat of the moment, because for 20 minutes we were like, it went from really well, like really long, like this is why you're wrong, like really reasonable, to like at the end I was like, as someone from Leeds yourself, Alex, who grew up going to our museums, it's kind of weird that you don't follow us. Didn't tweet it, thank goodness, but luckily we didn't have to, because one of our followers answered for us and said everything that we wanted to say, but probably better than we would have done. And this is just a really nice example of where kind of our followers have always had our back. I think whenever we've had any negative responses for anything, which hasn't been a lot luckily, our followers have always kind of supported us and got there first and done the answering for us. And I like to, this is maybe a bit arrogant of me, but I like to think it's because they know, because I've developed that personality, and they're kind of protective over the personality behind it almost. Okay, this one is a sea lion from our store. We've got lots of examples of really bad taxidermy, God bless the Victorians, but back in the day we probably would have tweeted this and been like, hey, like here's a sea lion, here's some facts about sea lions, it's in our store, and here's a link to more information about our store and how you can visit us. And that would have been really boring. So we tweeted this instead. And it's that playful thing of replacing song lyrics, everyone's something everyone can relate to, most people will know it, it's like a pop culture reference. And then underneath it, in a kind of storytelling way, we explained why the sea lion looked like this and went into the like the museum-y part of it, I guess. Also, every time you tweet any form of Avril Lavigne lyric, the universe gives you 10 points. So this one is a weird one because it's not that big. Like we didn't get like a huge viral response to this, but it's an example of a colleague sending you something inherently boring and asking you to tweet about it. And I have, like, John, who sent me this, was like, I'm really sorry, this is really boring, but please can you make it fun? And it's something we had to tweet. So I sat with it for a really long time and I was like, oh, what can we do? Do we do song lyrics with it? How do we approach it? And do you know what? Not everything has to be funny. Not everything has to be designed. Not everything has to be a big thing. Sometimes just like the content is the content and that's it. But if you just lay it out in a more readable way, like after this, we went and kind of split it into bits and explained a few things. But it's a really nice example of like where we didn't really have to do much, but just reframing it slightly. And this was a nice comment that we got back, and it kind of said everything. And Amelia is a curator at a museum in Melbourne, so it's like that international reach that like our annual report had, you know. Harry, it's always got to be Harry. I'm going to try and show you this. I don't know whether you can see. So this is our thread that we did during lockdown. I don't know if you can see. There we go. Okay, so this took a little bit of planning, but it really was so easy. Basically, it came from me thinking, what's something that I've seen recently that I've really enjoyed on social media, and I saw a thread like this that was like Rihanna as Indian food snacks. So I was like, okay, what do we have collections? But 1.3 million things. There's definitely some in there that we can connect to Harry Styles, because also if I can somehow make my job Harry Styles, that's just a dream, right? So how this worked was I spent a lovely afternoon just Googling pictures of Harry. I'm going to call him Harry. And then I sent them to our curators, who kind of looked at me like I was a bit insane, and was like, can you just take your pick in this folder and send me through some stuff that might be relevant to any of these things. And the responses that we got were so positive and so lovely. And it's still on that idea of kind of building a relationship with your followers, because we've kind of been drip feeding this theme for quite a while. I say theme, Harry. Like, it's literally as simple as like, we might be doing something and we'll do a little video whilst we're also listening to Harry's new album in the background, or, you know, something like that. It's like a little, like, almost like an Easter egg for people who have been there along with us along the way and know like get that and like, oh, that's because they were talking about that the other day. We've done this as well with moths. I don't know if anyone's seen on social media that we have a thing about moths. That's from a man tweeted us a picture of his daughter's moth museum that she made at home, and she'd like got loads of dead moths from around the house and pinned them to a corkboard and wrote like "Moth Museum by Emily, aged 5," and it was really sweet, and our followers really loved it. So we keep coming back to moths like a lot, but it's just a really lovely thing. Okay, so challenges. There are a few. There have been a few. So with multiple venues, having multiple channels and multiple accounts, there are multiple people inputting into those. And part of my role is to guide them in best practice, but there are challenges that come with it. So a lot of the time there's multiple people scheduling or posting on one account because it's not their full-time job. It's just like an addition into their job that maybe didn't exist like 5-10 years ago. It's something they've had to grow and develop in their role because of resource. So that comes with issues to do with quality and consistency and spelling, you know, like images, understanding tropes, that kind of thing. So our site accounts are less able to kind of garner a tone of voice because it isn't just one person. And there are just more people feeding into them. So I mentioned this a little briefly earlier. Internal resistance to change in tone of voice has been a challenge. And it's understandable, like the poo tweet as an example, poo tweet, caused a stir because kind of a lack of understanding about how that was strategic. And I understand because it's so different from the content that we were posting before. But it comes from a place of like colleagues generally who have that opinion, generally seeing social media still as a means of selling. It's there to sell tickets, it's there to sell workshops, sell events. Like it's there as a means to get your visitors to physically come in, so you can prove to your funders that like that it's worked, kind of thing. So it was that shift that not everyone was necessarily on board with, but that just meant that I had to explain, you know, that curators writing a text panel for a museum or writing a book, for example, isn't the same skill, because social media writing is a skill, isn't the same skill as writing on social media. You're not your audience, and you know this is what works, and luckily, you know, we have the statistics to back it up. That's what's so good about digital, is that you have statistics to back it up. Getting content is really difficult from people, just generally, like getting good quality images. You know, people are really busy, especially now, like we're all working from home. It can be difficult. And then social media burnout, which is a really important, really big thing that I could honestly talk about for like an hour, but I won't. Basically, when you're going through a hard time with your mental health, the first thing that anyone will tell you, the first thing that your doctor will tell you, the first thing that your therapist, counsellor, family will tell you is to limit your time on social media. And when it's your job, that isn't possible. And especially now, when you're working from home, you're on social media all the time with work, you leave work, but you're still at home and you're still on social media because that's how you communicate with the people who are hopefully going to make you feel better, your friends and family. It's just really, really hard. And it's made even harder by not having a supportive manager who understands that. I'm lucky that I do. And being told, I know there's lots of people that get told this, lots of my colleagues get told this, that being told by senior management to just make something go viral, you know, like, oh, the Merle did it, just make that go viral, just sell the rest of those tickets. And it's just not how it works. The pressure is wild. And there's a really good article on this I'm going to recommend you at the end, but I could honestly talk about it for a really long time because it's really important. And then also in the same vein as that, looking after colleagues in digital spaces. When you put someone on a Facebook Live, or when you ask someone to do a video for you, it's your responsibility as a social media manager to look after them and make sure they're aware of the risks involved in that, with trolling and stuff like that. So yeah, also, if anyone here is a social media manager, by the way, and wants to like talk or vent about any of these things, please genuinely message me after this, because it's really important to have a really good network of people who are supportive of you. Future plans. Okay, so Number one is to get back in the building, for one thing, but also really high on our agenda is to continue to post collections and tell stories as we have been doing, but with Black stories and the histories of people of colour generally within the collection as a priority, and being really honest about the biographies of key people that we have in the city, in our key collectors, you know, and how and why objects come to be in our collection. That's not just social media specific, that's something the whole service is doing, but that's something that's really high on kind of my work plan, I guess. The podcast, we're going to continue to do that, emulate our tone of voice on Twitter, which was always the plan, to kind of carry that over to another medium. And then also collecting. So lots of museums are already doing this. When you think about the last photograph that you took, I'm almost certain that most people here will have been on your phone, unless you're really cool and you've got like a 35mm situation going on. But digital photographs far outweigh analog photographs, and contextually rich content is being posted to social media every day. If you think about all the people that are posting pictures of them in masks and posting pictures of them going to eat out to help out restaurants, it's being posted every day. That should really be forming part of our social history collection. And the problem with that is that Facebook and Twitter and Instagram have no obligation to save those photographs, so they might not always be there. I don't know if anyone had MySpace back in the day, but something awful happened where like MySpace lost all of their content from between like 2006 to 2016 or something. It was a massive gap, and it all just went, like all that music, all the content, it just went. So it's a huge part of our contemporary lives that really needs to be recorded. Okay, I'm going to finish soon, I really promise. But just quickly, some unofficial secret advice for you, or just don't tell. Number one is that if you're not feeling it, don't do it, basically. If you're not having a good day and you don't want to be on social media, or you're like, oh, I have to tweet this, but I don't know how, I can't work out how to make it good, just don't do it. It's going to negatively impact your account and your strategy if you post something just for the sake of it. No one's going to notice that your content, that you haven't posted for a day if you don't do it. I know I've talked about our successes and stuff, but in the time since we've been in lockdown, sorry, I said I wasn't going to mention it, during the pandemic, our social media account has had quite a few days where I haven't posted anything. And like today I was aware that I was doing this, so I was a little bit nervous this morning, and I knew that I needed to post, like lots of people posting about A-level results for people, and I was like, oh god, I need to post that. And I was like, no, just calm down, just have a cup of tea and relax and it'll be fine. Like, don't post something just for the sake of it. Number two is that not everyone is going to like what you do, and they will probably voice it to you. And if there are any colleagues here who are working in marketing, you will understand that this is a thing that happens quite a lot. But know that somewhere, like, you are someone's favorite social media account, and what you're doing is important and great, and it's only going to become more important. And you can find support from other social media managers. And you know what? Chances are, if someone doesn't like what you're doing, you might not like what they're doing either, and that's fine. It's so easy on social media to look at what other people are doing and feel bad because you don't have maybe as many likes as them, or you haven't gone viral, but that's not a reflection of you. So many things are like time and space, the right time and right place, and some of it is just down to luck, no matter how strong your digital content plan is. So just remember that any museum's success, any library's success, is the sector's success, really. Number 4 is to steal things from other people unofficially. If you like something, if you're scrolling down, you find something funny, screenshot it, copy it. Like, don't waste time recreating a design that you've seen someone do and working out how to do it. Just copy and paste it and make it your own. It's the internet, that's how it works. It's totally fine. The last one is just, literally is not unofficial advice. Be nice, just be nice and ask people questions. And don't be scared to ask questions. Like, if the curator's doing something that you want to find out more about, or you don't quite understand like a certain thing that they're doing, just ask them. You're not stupid, it's totally fine. So I'm going to finish up with just some recommendations. So my favourite accounts are the Orkney Library and the National Library of Scotland, who talk to each other all the time, and they are so lovely. I really recommend following them. Yorkshire Tea are brilliant. The Monterey Bay Aquarium, I've literally stolen so much stuff from them, it's insane, but they do some really lovely things, and I could just like stalk their feed all day. Yorkshire Wildlife Park, also a little bit closer to home, is really good. And also, not mentioning Reading Museum and the Merle at this point would be criminal. And also interesting, the social media manager for them is the same, but the tone that they use is different on both. So it's interesting to see how he switches between them. Social media manager burnout, I spoke a little bit about, but read Russell Dornan's article. He's the social media manager at the V&A Dundee. He wrote a really good article on it. The Historic Royal Palaces did this thread, which was insane. I literally got it up just to show you. And it's why we're going to try and copy this at some point. But it's a really good, it's like a game. It's like you can choose how to escape the Tower of London, and it's wild. And there's like a right way of doing it, and I didn't get it. It took me like a really long time to do. Sorry, there we go. John Slay is a freelance arts educator, and when I mentioned earlier about protecting your colleagues in digital spaces, I went to a talk that he did on this basically, and he's really interesting. He's a really good advocate for it. He writes risk assessments, mental health risk assessments for anyone he's putting into a digital space, which I think is really good. Glasgow Women's Library are a really good example of people fighting and being politically active. They're basically like, museums aren't neutral. That's Glasgow Women's Library. They're really good. And then maybe us, I guess, if you don't already, give us a follow, hopefully. But yeah, I think that's it really. Thank you everyone for listening. Finn, Claire.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Meg. I've got loads. I absolutely love your sense of humour on Twitter. Can I ask, is it always just you on Twitter, or because it's very personal, I can't see the difference between anyone? Like, I know with our accounts we have 4 or 5 people, main social media librarians. So do you have more than one, or is it just yourself?
No, so it is mainly just me. If I'm off for a day, it's like I said, it's a creative writing job. When you're creative writing, it's really hard to like copy someone's tone of voice. So my colleague Sarah, who I work really closely with, she's my co-host on the podcast, she will like sub in for me, but will always kind of say, so if I'm ever going on leave or on holiday, I'll say, this digital engagement office off on a break, but I'll leave you in the capable hands of Sarah, or a lot of the time it's Sarah's dog Dimple. And we kind of were really honest about that, so people are aware that it's like a change in tone of voice. Yeah. So I've just seen everyone's chat. I haven't been looking at the chat. There's so many questions.
No, that's for me. I will have a little look for you now. I really love how much autonomy you've got in museums. That just came from question about who. Might be something that we can all copy, really. So let's see what we've got in here. I know that we had, Variety asked, what was the tweet that was liked by 1.7 million people? Was that from museums, or was that?
Yeah, okay, so I used the term liked very loosely because it wasn't liked, it was it reached 1.7. So that was, I'm not sure if anyone remembers, but we did a project a long time ago that we were able to finally talk about in January, where we worked with the universities to recreate the voice box of our Egyptian mummy, the Egyptian mummy that we have in our collection. Yes. And we took the mummy to the LGI and they scanned his voice box, and we had loads of like pictures from it, and we were able to share that and finally talk about it. And that reached so many people, that made international press. And Alyssa Milano off of Charmed tweeted about it, and it was my best thing ever. But that it wasn't necessarily all liked. That was a really difficult time because it's human remains and we take that really seriously, but also it's such a sensitive thing, and so many people have so many have lots of feelings about that, and collecting human remains and them being on display. And yeah, it was a very emotive thing, and it was kind of the nature of what it was as well that meant that it was so got reached so far.
I heard it on Radio 1. It did reach quite far. And then another question from Verity as well. How do you win over resistant colleagues and senior managers? I've worked with organisations that were on the up in terms of followers and content output, but now seem to have plateaued, and museums with similar content have partly filled the gap, not in competition. So how can you improve and convince council colleagues?
To be honest, I don't really have an answer for this, and if anyone does have an answer, please tell me it. I totally feel your pain, and I understand that, like, it's really hard, and I don't think that there are many other roles in museums, probably generally, but in museums certainly, there aren't many roles that get the kind of flack that a social media manager does, because it's so hard, I think, for colleagues to trust you to do something, and like people are so reluctant to realize that it's a skill and that you know what you're doing and to trust you. So in answer to that, I think I saved everything. Whenever anyone wrote anything good, like those screenshots I sent you, those were from like 2 years ago. Like, I've saved those because I've had to use them in so many emails to people just to say this is working. Like, ultimately, the most important thing the thing that I said to people is, you know, what's more important, your opinion or our audience, and how we're engaging with them. And the statistics are there. That's the beauty. You've got those. So use the statistics and just say, you know, it's working. And that's just all you can do. And I know it's so hard, but like, just keep trying. And it takes such a long time. It's been 3 years and it took so long. Honestly, like, it's crazy. You can't just jump into a role and expect it to all happen, everything to go smoothly. But know that, like, yeah, I totally understand, and everyone else also understands, because we all have it and we all know. And also cling to the ones that really do, like what you're doing. I have a happy emails folder that, like, whenever anyone sends me a lovely email, I just slip it in there, and it's like, I just look at that whenever someone doesn't like something.
Oh, thanks, Verity. Thanks, Megan. That's lovely. Yeah, it's quite difficult. We've got another one from Alex, and he's asking, what are the strategies for helping to grow followers on Twitter? So I don't know if that's your full strategy or a brief.
I feel like, in summary, probably just the personality thing. I think it's the personality thing. I think it's, for us, it's been developing that and being really, like, looking at what doesn't work, like what's not working for people, or what don't you like on Twitter, like what the accounts that you follow, why do you follow them and why do you like them? With us, I think the thing that I've always found is I don't like when museums are really stuck. I don't know if anyone here is from the British Museum, probably not, but I really don't like the British Museum's social media voice. Like, I use them as an example of what we don't want to be, because it's like kind of boring. It's like they've got loads of followers, so it doesn't matter really, but like their engagement rates for how many followers they have is really low. And you know, I think museums need to be accessible to everyone, and accessibility is so important, and the way that I think museums can do that is by having an accessible voice. And I think it's all about voice, basically, and strategy, basically. Sorry, I thought that was really unhelpful, but yeah.
No, really good. Thank you. Thanks, Alex, for your question. That's wonderful. We are running out of time now, but I think that's been really insightful on really changing the course of what you're doing with Twitter and seeing the successes of it. My internet is a bit unstable, so I do apologise if I'm breaking in and out now. So yes, thank you so much, Megan. I will be in touch again soon. And thank you to everyone who has joined us today. I have recorded this meeting. I might have missed the first bit because I always forget to press record because I get distracted. But I think we've got the main points for Megan's talk, so that's fantastic. Please do join us again next week. So next week we have Chelsea Slater from Innovate Her, which is a fantastic initiative across the north looking to get more women, young girls interested in tech because of the gender divide that still exists there. And she'll talk to you about her story and about what they're doing in the future as well. And we'll have Dawn from Leeds Libraries talking about what we do for young people as well. So please do join us. And then after that, we've got the lovely Buttercrumble who are on the chat today, and they're a fantastic graphic design and branding company, both they're twins, and we'll be inviting them to talk to us about how we can be innovative, just small things that we can do to be more innovative and creative. So I'm really looking forward to that. So yes, thank you, and I'll see you again soon, everyone. Thank you.